The first thing I noticed each morning was the dull light seeping through my curtains, barely enough to pierce the fog that hung in my mind. The world outside was always moving, always busy, but I couldn't seem to keep up. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling a strange detachment from everything around me. My phone buzzed beside me, notifications from work, texts from friends, social media updates, and I couldn't bring myself to care. It had started innocuously. A skipped coffee date here, an ignored text there. I thought nothing of it. Life got busy, after all, and sometimes it felt easier to shut myself off than to keep up with the expectations of the outside world. But then, gradually, it became more frequent. Days slipped by, and I found myself spending more time in bed than anywhere else. I would tell myself that I was just tired, that I needed rest, but that didn't explain the heaviness in my chest, the lack of energy in my limbs, the emptiness in my thoughts. I remember the first time I truly realized something was wrong. I had been sitting at my desk at work, staring blankly at my screen for what felt like hours. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't make myself care about the project I was supposed to be working on. Everything seemed irrelevant. I wanted to scream, to tell someone, but I couldn't even bring myself to say the words. I didn't know what the words were. How could I explain the endless noise inside my head, the feeling that I was drowning in a sea of nothing? That day, I went home early. I told my boss I wasn't feeling well, but the truth was, I didn't want to face anyone. I didn't want anyone to see how much I was falling apart. My room became my sanctuary, the place where I could just exist without pretending. But even here, it wasn't better. The silence was suffocating. It was like being trapped in a bubble, watching life go on outside while I was stuck in the same loop, unable to break free. It wasn't that I hated the people around me. Quite the opposite. I loved them. I just couldn't bear the thought of them seeing me like this. What would they think if I told them the truth? That I felt like I was disappearing? That everything I once enjoyed no longer felt meaningful? The shame of it was too much to bear. The messages kept coming, though. Texts from Sarah, calls from my mom, invitations to meet up from friends. I read them all, but the words felt distant, like they were meant for someone else. I felt too tired to respond, too anxious to open up. I didn't want to disappoint anyone, but I didn't know how to explain myself either. How could I tell Sarah, my closest friend, that I was too tired to even say hello? How could I admit to her that the person she had known for so long wasn't really me anymore? One night, I found myself staring at my phone again. Sarah had texted me, just checking in. She hoped I was doing okay and suggested we talk soon. The message was light-hearted, as if nothing had changed. I wanted to reply. I wanted to reach out, to tell her everything. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I closed the app and placed the phone face down on my bed. I couldn't face her. I couldn't face anyone. The next day, I woke up with the same sense of dread hanging over me. I had no desire to get out of bed, no motivation to face the day. The thoughts were louder now, whispering things I didn't want to hear. I wasn't good enough. I'd never get better. No one cared. It felt like they were invading every corner of my mind, pushing me deeper into the shadows. I dragged myself out of bed and made my way to the cafe, hoping that a change of scenery might help. I ordered a coffee and sat by the window, trying to focus on the people around me. There was a sense of normalcy here, something I couldn't grasp. I watched them all, laughing and talking, and felt like an outsider. I wanted to join them, but I couldn't. The weight in my chest made it hard to breathe, let alone speak. And then I saw her. Sarah. She entered the cafe, scanning the room until her eyes landed on me. Her face lit up with recognition, and before I could stop her, she was walking toward me, her usual energy surrounding her. She sat down across from me, her smile wide and warm. She asked how I had been, how everything was going. I didn't know how to answer. I didn't know what to say. I tried to smile, but it felt like I was forcing it, like it was some kind of mask I was trying to keep in place. I said I was fine, but it didn't feel true. It felt like the words didn't belong to me. But Sarah wasn't fooled. She looked at me for a long moment, her expression softening, as if she could see through the walls I had built. I could feel her concern rising, and I wanted to look away, to run, but I couldn't. I could feel her eyes on me, searching, waiting for me to let my guard down. And then it happened. I didn't mean to let it slip, but I felt the words spill out before I could stop them. I said that I didn't know how to do this anymore, that I felt like I was losing myself, like I wasn't even here anymore. I said I didn't know how to fix it. For the first time in weeks, I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw the compassion in her eyes. It was a quiet kind of understanding, the kind that doesn't rush to solve everything but simply listens. She didn't try to fix me or tell me everything would be okay. She just let me be. And for the first time in so long, I felt like someone truly saw me. Not the mask I put on every day, but the raw, vulnerable version of myself that I had kept hidden for so long. Over the next few weeks, things didn't magically improve. I didn't wake up one morning and feel like my old self again. But something shifted. The darkness didn't seem as consuming. I started answering messages, slowly reconnecting with people, letting them in. I reached out to a therapist, though every part of me resisted it. Talking to a stranger about my feelings felt like an impossible task. But I went, and I kept going. It wasn't easy, and some days it felt like I was taking one step forward and 2 steps back. But each time I went, I felt a small piece of the weight lift. It was hard, so much harder than I had imagined. There were days when I wanted to crawl back into bed and shut the world out. But now, I knew I didn't have to face it alone. I had people who cared about me. I had Sarah, my mom, even my coworkers. They weren't going anywhere, and that was something I had to learn to accept. Some days, the darkness still crept back in, but I had learned to fight it, little by little. I wasn't completely healed. I wasn't sure if I ever would be. But I was no longer living in silence, pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. I was speaking up. I was letting others in. And that, for now, was enough.